The human body comes wired with an alarm system built to catch danger the instant skin registers unexpected contact. That system works flawlessly against strangers, insects, falling branches, nearly anything the physical world can throw at it. It fails, completely, against exactly one attacker, the person carrying it around. Try it. Run a finger along the ribs, the inside of an arm, the sole of a foot. Nothing happens. Now imagine someone else doing the exact same motion, same pressure, same speed. Total collapse. Same nerve endings, same skin, same stimulation reaching the same brain. The only thing that changed is who was driving the hand. There are technically two kinds of tickle. Kinesmesis is the light, itchy version. A feather trailed across skin, and a person can sometimes trigger that one on their own. Gargalysis is the heavier, rhythmic kind applied to ribs and underarms that produces real laughter, and it's gargalysis specifically that collapses the instant the hand belongs to its owner. So what's actually happening in that half second before a ticklish reaction fires, or doesn't? Somewhere in the base of the brain, the cerebellum runs a prediction before every movement, calculating exactly what a self-generated sensation should feel like, then checking that forecast against the real signal coming back a fraction of a second later. Match the prediction, and the brain cancels the signal before it ever reaches conscious attention. Self-generated touch gets predicted, matched, and muted before it can register as anything worth reacting to. Without that system, walking would trigger a low-grade alarm every time a foot hit the ground, and scratching an itch would compete with a genuine threat for attention. Tickling runs on exactly the kind of unpredictability that system is built to catch. Remove the surprise, and there's nothing left to react to, the same reason a jump scare stops working once someone tells you exactly when it's coming. In 1998, neuroscientist Sarah Jane Blakemore tested that idea directly, and the setup was almost comically simple. Volunteers controlled a small robotic arm that tickled them with a short built-in delay, sometimes a fraction of a second, sometimes closer to a full second. As the delay grew, the sensation stopped feeling self-generated and started registering as genuinely ticklish again, almost as if a stranger's hand were behind it. Push the timing far enough out of sync, and the brain's prediction model simply lost the plot. The alarm fired anyway. That same prediction system appears to misfire in some people diagnosed with schizophrenia, who report being able to tickle themselves, something almost nobody else can pull off. Researchers studying self-monitoring deficits suspect a disrupted version of that forward model machinery may blur the line between self-generated and externally generated sensation more broadly, possibly tied to symptoms like hearing internal thoughts as if they came from somewhere else entirely. A tickle test, of all things, ends up offering a window onto one of psychiatry's harder open questions. None of this is a recent discovery either. Charles Darwin noticed the pattern more than a century before anyone scanned a brain, writing in 1872 that a person cannot tickle themselves nearly as effectively as someone else, and that the mind has to be in a pleasurable state, anticipating touch from someone familiar, before real, ticklish laughter appears. Familiarity and trust were never a side detail. They were a prerequisite, and Darwin clocked that from a notebook, no robotic arm required. Now zoom out, because the ticklish reflex has a much older story sitting underneath it. The spots that react hardest, ribs, underarms, the neck, the soles of the feet, sit directly over the throat. Arteries, soft tissue near vital organs. One long-standing theory treats ticklishness as a leftover defensive reflex, a trigger built to make ancestral primates flinch and guard exactly the regions a predator would target first. The flinch came first, sharp and purely protective. The laughter came later, repurposed from something that started as pure self-defense. But a pure threat reflex wouldn't come packaged with something that looks like enjoyment, and only from the right hands. In 2009, primatologist Marina Davila Ross compared tickle-induced sounds across humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, and bonobos, and the acoustic patterns lined up closely enough to suggest a shared root stretching back somewhere between 10 and 16 million years. Play tickling among young apes happens almost exclusively between familiar, trusted partners, essentially never between strangers or rivals. A reflex meant purely to protect ribs wouldn't need trust to fire. A signal meant to test and build social bonds absolutely would. It isn't only primates either. Neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp found that young rats tickled gently on the belly and neck emit rapid ultrasonic chirps well above human hearing that closely resemble the sound of ordinary rodent play. Tickled rats didn't just tolerate it. They chased the researcher's hand back across the cage for more once it stopped, the rodent version of a kid tugging a sleeve for one more turn on the swings. Even the timeline inside one human life backs this up. Newborns don't laugh when tickled. That reaction shows up gradually around 4 to 6 months old, on roughly the same schedule as an infant's growing ability to recognize familiar faces. A nervous system that hasn't yet built a reliable model of who has nothing to hand a ticklish response to. So the laughter waits for recognition to catch up first, which brings the whole thing back down to skin, and a wider question worth sitting with. Why does touch from the right person feel completely different from the exact same touch delivered by a stranger, or a machine, or nobody at all? Neuroscientist Francis McGlone identified a class of nerve fibers in human skin that respond most strongly not to just any contact, but specifically to slow, gentle stroking at roughly skin temperature, the kind that shows up in hugs and in contact between people who trust each other. Those fibers feed into brain regions tied to reward and bonding, rather than plain sensation, which may help explain why touch deprivation correlates with measurable increases in stress and loneliness. The body isn't just tracking whether contact happened, it's tracking who it came from, which loops back, finally, to that internal alarm that supposedly failed the moment it was tested on its own owner. It was never actually broken. It's selective, and the selectivity is the entire point. A system that cancels every self-generated sensation but still lights up on cue the instant an outside hand crosses onto vulnerable territory isn't a flaw in the wiring. It's a built-in trust detector, quietly running a background check on every unexpected touch a person will ever receive, so it can reserve genuine alarm and apparently genuine laughter for contact that actually came from somewhere else. Reach over and try those ribs one more time if it helps the point land. Nothing will happen, and it never will, because that particular alarm was never built to answer to its owner. It was built 10 million years ago and counting to notice everyone else, and it has been quietly keeping that promise ever since.